Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Megan Amoss is with us. She's written an article for Radio World and featured in a Women in Radio Engineering article in Radio World. She's joining Chris, Tarr, and me to talk about her role at Baltimore Public Media and what it's like to be on the cutting edge of technology at that radio station group. It's coming up next on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Air, featuring Playout One radio automation software, comprehensive streaming solutions, website content management, and social media tools for maximum listener engagement on the web at AIIR.com. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb there at the top of the tower. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack. I'm here in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee, where the fake spring has sprung. It's a beautiful, warm temperature outside. It was like 80 degrees at the airport yesterday. It's 62 now, but still just beautiful weather here. We've put up with a lot of nasty weather, not like Chris Tarr has, but we put up with a lot of nasty weather in the last couple of weeks. So it's a beautiful day here. And I am just so excited about today's show. And one reason I'm excited is because Chris Tarr has joined us. Chris, welcome in. It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Now, as far as our forecast, I just got done voice tracking. Oh, look at my nice, messy house. Jeez. Mostly cloudy, chance of rain tomorrow. Wind advisory, 45-mile-an-hour winds, and a high of 53. So it's actually kind of fake spring here, too. It's actually been really nice. I was in Iowa past couple of days, and it was 60 out there. That was kind of cool. Almost wore shorts.
Oh. Well, 45-mile-an-hour winds. You're not having any tower work done this week, are you?
No. That would be no.
Yeah.
I mean, although I know, some of these tower guys are crazy, so there may be somebody out there who'd want to do it, but I'm going to put my foot down on that.
Well, the tower guys that I know on a 45-mile-an-hour wind day, they would show up to the site for a minute, look around and say, we're going to the bar. You can catch us there.
Well, tower climbers will go to the bar for any reason, so it doesn't even have to be windy and they're going to go to the bar.
That's right. Oh, I got some stories to tell. But I can't. We got to protect the innocent. Hey, Chris, it's good to see you. Glad you're back. Glad you made it back safely from Iowa. And we've got a cool guest with us today, Megan Amoss. Megan, hey, welcome in. Good to see you on TWiRT.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad that you're here, Megan. I heard about you by reading one of my favorite magazines, of course, Radio World Magazine. How did you get into Radio World Magazine, Megan?
Well, I spent a lot of time last year figuring out how to get my radio stations here at Baltimore Public Media set up on radio DNS and DTS auto stage. And the boss, actually, the general manager, said, why don't you write an article about that? So I thought, maybe I could actually do that. And I pitched it to Radio World and they accepted it. That's how I got in there.
Nice. Good deal. And you appeared in Radio World for a couple of reasons. Not only that article, and we're going to show some pictures and hear you talk about that topic, but also because you're a bit of an anomaly because you're female in engineering. And so it's welcome to the club. I hope it's not too bad.
It's not too bad. You don't notice it too much, except in certain situations, and some of them are funny. Like when I went to the transmitter training class at Gates Air, the men's bathroom had like room for a lot of people, and the women's bathroom was just one little. I was the only female student. And there aren't a lot of female students in those pictures. And the other funny thing I think I told you yesterday was I went to a transmitter site, and there was a tower crew there, and they were carrying on like people do. And when they saw me, they all said, "Shh, a girl, shh."
Oh my goodness. Oh geez. I guess I know what that feels like. I know I've been standing in a group of guys and somebody's saying something they maybe shouldn't, and then they, out of the corner of their eye, they see our pastor from church walking up. Oh, shh, pastor's here. So, that's never happened to you, Chris, has it?
Oh no, never. But a true story along those lines is we were a year or two ago, we were doing some work at one of the radio stations, which involved some concrete work. And the friend of mine that I used to do concrete work, his daughter will come by, and she's like 20, 21. And one of my coworkers, she was lifting some stuff, and he's like, "Oh, no, you shouldn't do that." And I'm like, "She could kick your butt. What are you talking about? Leave her alone." And she's laughing. She's like, "Yeah, she's like, I could totally take you." But yeah, it is unusual, but I don't know that it needs to be. I know we should have him on sometime. Mike Messick, who owns a station in Door County. I work really closely with his technical director, who is also a woman, and she's smarter than I am. So there's definitely you're kind of a unicorn, is how I put it. But yeah, it's odd because I think the tide may be changing a little bit, just because there's such a lack of talent out there, and women could always do the job. But I just think that, just like anything else, that avenue wasn't really well publicized. People didn't know that there are these careers here, and there's definitely. Since there's so many really smart women in IT, there's really no reason they couldn't be doing engineering stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure Megan's going to tell us about her IT experience. And we're not only going to hear a little bit about Megan's story in the coming hour, but we're also going to learn some things about radio DNS, about metadata. And Megan has become quite an expert on that. And Chris, I know metadata is actually one of your favorite topics. A lot of us just kind of whittle around until we kind of get it done and then say, okay, that's done. But you guys are both fans of metadata. Going to talk about radio DNS and DTS auto stage, and of course the pad for HD and RDS. All that's coming up. It's This Week in Radio Tech. As I've mentioned, I'm Kirk Harnack, and welcome into the show. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends, my friends. They should be your friends too, at AIR, AIIR.com. And I got to talk to the president CEO of AIR a few weeks ago, and that's Ricky Lee. Let's take a look. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack, and I'm here with Ricky Lee, the CEO of AIR. Ricky, you guys make a fantastic automation system, but streaming is a really big deal. Tell me about streaming with AIR.
It really is. We've got a beautiful streaming platform with an incredible dashboard with fantastic analytics. And you can buy it for just $20 a month. All you can eat. No limits on bandwidth or bit rates. And you can also record shows as well. So if you like to deliver on-demand content for $20 a month, you can stream and deliver that on-demand content to an RSS feed that can feed your radio player, your mobile apps, or a podcast that people can download and enjoy.
Now, $20 a month, that must be for just some slow MP3, right?
No, MP3, AAC, and we also now support HLS, which is big in the industry right now.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. How do I start to explore or find out more about streaming through AIR?
You go to air.com, AIIR.com/streaming. And from there, with a credit card, you can sign up and get started.
Check it out at AIIR.com, and you're going to enjoy what you see. We're big fans of their automation systems and have yet to try the streaming ourselves, but I know that people are loving it. All right, Kirk Harnack and Chris Tarr here on This Week in Radio Tech. It's our 737th episode. Thank you for being here for however many you've been here for. A lot of folks have been here for pert near all of them. And also our guest is Megan Amoss. Megan Amoss is here, and she is going to talk with us about metadata. In fact, why don't we go ahead and just jump right into that topic. Chris and Megan, I know you two can really dish it out on this topic. Megan, you started to tell us a few minutes ago that you got involved with radio DNS. I've heard that term. We've had a guest or two on this show in years past about radio DNS. And frankly, I get confused about what is RDS and PAD. I think I've got those finally settled in my head. Radio DNS, what is that? What does it do for the broadcaster and for the listener. And then I get that confused with DTS auto stage. And I think you've got experience with all of these. So why don't you give us your view on how to clear up which is which and what they do?
Okay, so radio DNS is it's a centralized, standardized system for locating stations' metadata using the domain name service that already exists that's part of the internet. Like when you type in google.com, the DNS system knows that translates to an IP address. So it's basically using that service that already exists in the internet that everybody already uses to provide this service for radio. Now that the receivers in cars have this capability to, access the internet, they can use that same system. Your signal is sending down the code that says this is, me, pi code, whatever, that goes to radio DNS. It points it to where all your metadata is, and that goes back to the receiver in the car. So what is good about that is that you can have logos, metadata, station ID without having to send that out through your own transmitter. The reason that we were so interested in it is because all of our equipment here was, I guess you would call it legacy. So we had the older HD stuff. Some of our stations didn't have HD at all. One of them didn't have RDS, and so once we got the radio DNS set up, receivers that have that enabled would show us on an equal footing with stations who have that equipment that can broadcast the images and the information over their signal themselves. And the cool thing about radio DNS is that it's open and it's standardized, which are two things that I think are very important. And a lot of things are, proprietary and idiosyncratic, and you have to make 5 different logos, all different sizes. You have to format your data all different ways for each one of these things. Radio DNS, it's the same. So that's nice. I'd like to see that continue to be more widely adopted. And
okay.
DTS auto stage. Do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah. Please compare those now.
So DTS auto stage is a proprietary service from Ubiquiti, and it's free to sign up for. It does the same things that radio DNS does. It's a little bit easier to get your now playing data through DTS auto stage than it is for doing radio DNS yourself. It sends the logos. It's not in every car, but neither is radio DNS. But the cool thing about DTS auto stage is that once you get it running, and you have to be sending it live now playing data, they will provide you with a heat map of where listeners are listening to you in their cars, which is neat.
Yeah,
I think that makes it worth it.
So are you at your public stations in Baltimore using one or both of these?
We are using both of them.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you can use them both at the same time, and that would allow you to hit.
They don't talk to each other.
Yeah. And is it the case that modern car radios, and I don't own a modern car, right? Actually, our stations in Hawaii that we just put on the air on Maui, we did buy a station car, and we made sure it had an HD radio. We didn't know that it was equipped also with DTS auto stage. And as far as I know, it may have radio DNS capability. I don't know. We're not signed up with radio DNS yet, but now I've got reason to do so now. But on DTS auto stage, yeah, we get title and artist and station logo on stations that I knew we were not sending that data yet. And in fact, we actually had the old logo for a couple stations that changed format.
Right. So they like TuneIn and other aggregators, they scrape that. And so it's in your interest to sign up for it and make sure that stuff is up to date, because they'll scrape whatever they can find. and it's not necessarily correct.
Well, Chris, you guys do a lot of metadata there at your place. You've got a data center kind of dedicated, or some servers dedicated to metadata. Tell me how's your experience compared to what Megan said?
Actually, Megan's. I'm at some point gonna have to pick her brain because I'm still working on radio DNS and the ubiquity or the DTS stuff. But first of all, Kirk, I got to correct you. It's not PAD anymore. It's PSD data, which is actually kind of redundant. Okay. But the one thing that kind of drives me nuts, and Megan kind of touched on this with metadata, is there's all these different providers. None of them are the same. So, you're having to run separate software to do HD, RDS, the radio DNS, all that kind of stuff requires all different types of metadata, to the point where I now have virtual servers dedicated just for that. I mean, with 20 some stations, each one is a little bit different. So, I have some that are RDS only. I have some that are RDS and HD. I have some that are HD and then a sub channel, which requires PSD and feeds a translator, which requires RDS. So, it would be fantastic. And then not only that, you've got RDS versus RBDS. It has gotten to the point where it's very difficult sometimes to manage all the different metadata streams. Oh yeah, and there's streaming too, which requires metadata. So, there is some software out there that can handle it all. However, a lot of that is really, like especially in our case, is kind of out of reach financially. I think the last time I checked, it would have cost, upwards of $50,000 for a subscription to software that could handle all of those different stations and all of those different streams. So I've started kind of rolling my own for some of that. And, it's a challenge, but, as Megan said, it's important to do because you want to be on equal footing as everybody else. And, we've talked about this before with car radios. One of the struggles that we have as broadcasters to win in the connected car, and the manufacturers tell you this, is you've got, XM and, Spotify and all these things doing just fantastic looking album art, title and artist and everything else on these displays. Then you press a button for the radio and you get a number and that's it.
Yeah.
And, it's really hard to sell an infotainment system when that's all you've got. So, that's why things like radio DNS, DTS, and all of these things is super duper important, HD radio and those sorts of things, because that's part of the reason why radio is kind of getting the back seat in newer cars, because, it's in the car manufacturer's best interest to show off their displays. And, when all we're doing is a little frequency on there, maybe a little bit of text, there's really nothing compelling about that. And we have the technology and the way to do it. Unfortunately, like I mentioned before, it's all kind of different separate things. So it's really kind of hard to just do one and done. But it is something that if you're not doing it now, you should be doing it soon.
Megan, I know that your automation playout systems give you title, artist, and other information that you may choose to export in real time as things start. What middleware software have you been using to format the data for these different what am I trying to say, endpoints?
Okay, well, we have an interesting situation where WTMD was bought by WYPR a couple of years ago. So I have wide orbit for WTMD, and I have ENCO DAD for WYPR. So I'm able to use and compare those two automations and the middleware that works with them. So for the wide orbit, we're using Media Realm Meta Radio.
Mm-hmm.
And that he's great. He's got a lot of export destinations built in. He's got DTS built in. He's got, RDS, whatever, and many things built in. And then for the YPR, we're using Patapult, which, is also pretty powerful. It is quirky, and for DTS auto stage, the field is just not quite long enough to get the whole URL. So there's a little bit of stickiness there with that one. Yeah, so I mostly, if somebody asks me, I recommend the Meta Radio because it's affordable, first of all, and second of all, it's powerful and easy to use and actively being developed.
Gotcha. Chris, have you had a chance to try Media Realm? I got to in Oxford, Mississippi, when I threw my hands up and couldn't figure out how to get PSD into my HD stuff, and Media Realm just said, just let us do it for you. It's really easy and it's not expensive. And so we subscribed, got the software, and literally in 15 minutes, all of my HDs had metadata on them, title and artist.
I've used most of them. I've tried that. I've done Patapult. I've done TRE. I've done Jump to Go. You name it. I've probably had my hands in it once or twice. And again, Megan kind of mentioned this. The one issue that I've found is that I've yet to find one that does everything perfectly. That doesn't, kill you in terms of cost. Because again, I would love to use, like Center Stage or something like that. I have a couple licenses for that for some of the stations we acquired. But it's so prohibitively expensive. But even that doesn't do everything I'd like it to do. So, everything's a little bit of a compromise. One of the pieces of software we're using right now for just RDS, and we may use it for some other things, which is surprisingly powerful yet really, really hard to figure out, is the Magic RDS that comes with the Pura encoders.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Really inexpensive, and we can have like 200 stations or something, but there is a really steep learning curve. So my assistant, who's a real good IT guy as well, we sat down over a weekend and banged it out, and we've actually gotten it to do a lot of what we wanted to do. It required some hacking and some script writing and things, but we've gotten it pretty close to what we want and a lot more affordable than what we normally pay. But that's kind of the struggle that we have, and not only that, but when you're doing this with as many stations as I have, I don't have the same encoders everywhere. I've got I've got Innovonics, I've got Pura, I've got Nautel has it built in. So I have to also script it for all these different types of encoders too. So there are a few pieces of software. Patapult is really powerful that way. TRE can be powerful that way. That can actually do several outputs at once. But for example, TRE's licensing is you pay per output. So, if I wanted to do, an RDS encoder, HD1, HD2, HD3, I have to buy each one of those modules. So, that's the other challenge to this is we'd all like to do it, but there's a financial component to that. And if you look at TRE, which at one time was $500 per output, multiply that by 22 stations just for the one RDS output each.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gets to be expensive after a while.
You hit the nail on the head there mentioning Magic RDS. It does work like magic. Nobody knows how it works, but
and the thing is it's really powerful once you get your head around it. Like we've got it doing, all these kind of text replacements, and we're playing spots. We can send separate metadata to the stream, and so it's really, really powerful. But it is stupid crazy to try to get it figured out.
I wanted to
go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to dig into that, but then we started doing studios and transmitters here, so I've had to abandon it. But I want to get back to that.
Yeah, it's really like I said, it's very, and the price is right. I think I paid $200, and it's licensed for like 200 stations or something. And like I said, it's not at all easy to set up, but once you do it, it can do anything.
Wow. That's good to know. I've been in various products from Omnia and others. I've been using, I guess, the RDS stuff that Hans has come up with, and that seems to work. I've kind of got that figured out. Hey, it's This Week in Radio Tech. Chris Tarr is with us, and so is Megan Amoss, and we're talking about Megan's career and her learning journey through engineering, broadcast engineering, at the public media stations in Baltimore. We'll have more coming up in just a minute. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Bionics and the amazing Camera One system. We'll be right back.
Camera One from Broadcast Bionics. Designed to bring video to your audio content. Visualizing radio and podcasts for social media. Camera One can automatically create, capture and brand professionally switched video for live streaming or upload, making your production shareable. Control and configure using a web browser on any device. Camera One is available as a 4-camera or 8-camera system using the Blackmagic A10 Mini range, including the A10 Mini Extreme. You can use cameras to suit your studio and your budget. You'll need one camera for a studio wide shot and usually one camera per microphone. A standard multi-channel sound card or IP driver monitors audio from each studio microphone, and we work natively with Axia systems. Ideally, this will be a post-fader feed from each mic, although you can use pre-fade audio or a mic split if that's all you have available. These audio levels are used to intelligently switch the video feed when each contributor is talking. You can also group microphones together into one shot and use the audio from a mixer's aux bus. You can use Camera One's auto switch feature, or disable it and switch using the on-screen buttons or the buttons on the A10. Recordings can automatically start when you tell the system you're on the air. This on-air indication can be linked to your studio's red lights via IP or an Avantec Adam GPIO interface. You can quickly browse all the videos that have been automatically created during your broadcast, download them and post. Camera One is a user-installable system. You'll need a good spec Windows 10 PC, i7 with plenty of storage and 16 gig of RAM. It's better if this machine isn't used for anything else. Remember, you can control the software in a web browser on another device on your network. Camera One, a thrifty way of creating scroll-stopping video from your show or podcast from Broadcast Bionics.
Love Broadcast Bionics software and systems. They make the best stuff, and it all helps your talent create more content and more effective content easily, pretty much by doing what they do now anyway. It just makes their job better and easier, and you get more output from it. The Camera One system is so cool. Thanks so much, Broadcast Bionics, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack. Chris Tarr is along, and our guest is Megan Amoss. And Megan is the Assistant Chief Engineer at Baltimore Public Media. They've got some FM stations there. Megan, you have what, about 4 FM stations there at your place?
We have WYPR, WYPO, WYPF, and WTMD.
Wow.
And
okay.
three of those are the same. The news station, and then TMD is music. AAA.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. So you have basically two program outputs coming from your studios to 4 different transmitters. Okay. Good deal. All right. Chris, let's see. I wanted to get a story from Megan. And Megan, you told me during our interview earlier this week about your computer lab entrance exam, and that was rather noteworthy. Can you retell that story for us?
Sure. I went back to school for a second bachelor's, and I was going back for fine art with a concentration in painting and drawing. And while I was doing that, I needed a job. So I applied for a student job, a part-time job in the computer lab, and I got the job. And it was because I answered these 2 vital questions correctly. And one of them was, does your family ask you to fix their computer? And I said yes. And the second one was, what do you do if you don't know how to fix something? And I said, Google is your friend. And apparently that was the right answer.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
There you go. Interview tips for the IT world.
There you go.
Well, Chris, there's two very good interview questions for you when you're looking to hire a new technician.
Well, it's interesting. We talk about the SBE certification exams, and part of that is open book. And the reason for that is exactly what you said. It's not about knowing the answer. It's about knowing where to get the answer. And that is so important. So important. I was going to mention when I was the director of engineering for public media at Radio Milwaukee in Milwaukee. It is interesting, and I'm sure Megan will touch on this a little bit. It's a whole different world in terms of using metadata when you're a station like that. First of all, metadata is so important, especially for the music station when you're in public media, because there's a lot of, the music may not be as familiar all the time. There's a lot of music discovery and things like that. And so people are really interested in knowing what they're hearing. Also, I don't know about you, but I had a lot of live music in our facility too, and we needed to provide metadata for that. And then going back and doing sound exchange and things like that. So there's a whole other dimension, I think, especially in public media with metadata. Subchannels. We had subchannels that had some student-run programming, and then we changed the format to something else there. We also had a lot of local music where, the metadata wasn't exactly already widely available. And so we had to create some new metadata for that with like album art, where we had to upload album art and those sorts of things. So I'm sure you've probably run into that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The music discovery station, when we were in our old building, we had a performance space. So we were doing live events with bands that nobody's ever heard of all the time. And so my husband actually wrote a script for us so that whoever is not even necessarily the person who's on the air, but somebody at a computer could type in what's on the air, and it would stick it into the wide orbit now playing XML file, and then get picked up by all the metadata grabbers and sent out to the various destinations. So that was really useful, and he's got that up on GitHub if people want to look at it.
That's great.
But yeah, for sure.
And wide orbit is actually pretty friendly when it comes to metadata. Now I use Simian, which is a whole other animal, but my previous life at Odyssey, we use wide orbit exclusively, and it's pretty powerful when it comes to metadata and what you can create with their, I don't even remember what they call them anymore, but with their various plugins for things. So it's very powerful. I also find that Patapult and Enco is pretty powerful. Once again, Enco is one of those that you kind of got to get your head around it first. But once you do that, it's pretty powerful too. But that's also a key factor in all of this is what your playout system is. Some playout systems are fantastic. Some, aren't so great. But it's all about how you can make that work. And again, that's where middleware becomes important, because you got to have middleware that can take basically whatever your system can spit out. In fact, in some cases, WMSE in Milwaukee is another public station that I consult for, a community station. They play a lot of vinyl, so they are entering in metadata by hand. I think they're using Center Stage for that. So as the person's on the air when the song's playing, they're having to type in the metadata for that. So there's all these different considerations you have to think about.
Yeah, we call it we call it using the tree, because I chose the little tree icon that comes with Windows for the program. Make sure you use the tree.
That's great.
One thing about metadata, I'll put in a good word too. I know they're one of our sponsors, and that is Air. We heard from earlier. They make Playout One. Playout One has an enormous number of output connectors to that are give you your pre-formatted data to connect to all kinds of different things like TRE and plenty of others. So anyway, that's I love it when I mean, hey, this beauty of standards, there are so many of them, but when an automation manufacturer supports so many different kinds of outputs, and I know the folks at Playout One, you tell them about a new kind of output that's needed, that they need to look into. And I know that we've gotten action within 2 or 3 weeks. Oh yeah, here's this new output to feed, whatever it may be, like DTS Auto Stage. Just there it is. And it gets right up. Megan, you are pretty familiar, and so is Chris. You guys can dish on this with audio over IP, and in your case, Megan, and you too, Chris, very familiar with Livewire. Of course, people at Livewire, Telos Alliance is my employer, so I'm really familiar with Livewire and have been for about 21 years now. Done a lot of presentations and seminars on the topic, just enough for what engineers need to know to deal with it. And one of the things that we always touted about audio over IP was that it makes it easy to transport metadata along with the music. Because back in the days when we had computers with a sound card, when that computer was spitting out the audio, there was no metadata with that audio. Sure, you could get it out maybe of a serial port separately, and then you had to go treat that separately, and I'm glad those days are gone. But now the same connector and the same network that's carrying the audio out of a playout system, and the playout system knows all about that cut. It knows how long it is. It knows who the title and artist is. If it's a commercial or an underwriting announcement, they know who it is, whatever you've typed in for the title. And so if you play that out of a sound card, you lose all that information, or you lose it for conveniently available. So Megan, maybe you could talk to us about your Livewire audio over IP experience and how metadata just floats right along with the audio on the same network, so it's kind of easy to use. Yeah.
Well, as far as I know, actually ours doesn't. It goes along on the wide orbit network.
Okay, so you can do that too. Yep.
Not a good question for me to answer.
No, but it comes out IP, and your computers, I guess, have 2 network cards: one for your AoIP network, and one for the network that handles file transfers, remote access, that kind of thing for your computers. And it can be done kind of either way. Chris, what's your experience with using AoIP and how that might make metadata easier to transport and handle?
Yeah, I've done both. One of the things that I love is the ability to do GPIO over IP, and that helps for certain types of triggering metadata. There's different ways you can trigger metadata. There's obviously the pull method. There's a push method. You can read a file. You can base it on a cart number. Well, that's a throwback, part number. And you can also do it on various triggers like GPIO. So, we've done some things with sporting events where we use a trigger from Axia to update the metadata based on that trigger. So, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that audio over IP has helped with that. And it also, again, with just as an IP plant in radio now, if you're not running IP, you can kind of miss out on some of this stuff. The ability to do some of these a little more advanced things, because again, and especially in public media, as I learned my time there, it's all about the listener experience. And especially in public media, you've got listeners who are supporting you, and you need to take care of them, and you need to make sure that their experience is great. And that should go across to everybody. But, really, if you're not providing that stuff, somebody else will be, and you don't want to miss out on that. So it's really all about the experience, and things like audio over IP, where you can do triggers for different things, blackouts, all that kind of stuff, I think is super important.
Hey, since we were talking on the topic of audio over IP, I know that Megan has done some pretty cool things with Pathfinder software, which isn't required to keep the AoIP streams flowing, but it does make it quite convenient to do some pretty sophisticated routing at the touch of a button. And Megan, I think we have a picture of a stream deck available when you ask for it. You put together something. Well, there it is, right there. You put together something that's pretty convenient. What are we looking at here?
This is a mini stream deck that sits on the table in our green room where the guests come in for the talk shows, and it's connected to a speaker. Well, indirectly connected to a speaker. It's connected to a tiny little stick computer that's stuck underneath of the table. And those buttons will let them listen to any one of our 5 signals on the speaker that's in the green room. And that the little stick computer talks over the office Wi-Fi network to Pathfinder.
Okay, so
Pathfinder changes what comes out of the speaker.
now, Chris, do you have any experience with Stream Decks?
I do. Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, Megan, pretend I don't have experience with Stream Decks because I don't. They're used by some of the applications at Telos Alliance, but I've never spent the money to go get one and play with it. Tell me what you had to do to make this happen, where somebody in the green room with no technical knowledge, they're going to be a guest, they see the Stream Deck with the different logos on it. How did you make these logos appear, and what happens when you push a button? How does that make some audio come out of a speaker?
Okay, well, for this application, I used a pre-made plugin that is in the Stream Deck library. It was actually a free plugin. It's called Command Sender, and I used it to assign the button press to send a short string to a Pathfinder listener. And when the Pathfinder listener hears that, then it changes a route. The logos you just load into the Stream Deck on the buttons. It's very, very drag and drop. And if you don't,
really cool.
I don't think the plugin that I used works on Mac, but I did make a fake one in Python, so it's possible to make your own.
That is very cool. And keep in mind, too, for those of you who want to do this, who may not have Pathfinder, you can do that running command line, too. So you can, that's how I do a lot of my stuff, and I don't have Pathfinder. So we just use PowerShell to send routing commands to nodes. And so that would be another way you could do that. That is really cool. I've never seen that before.
Isn't that beautiful? I was so excited when she described it, and I didn't see the picture of the Stream Deck until Megan sent it to me earlier today. So that was really, so that's a real convenience item. And of course, yeah, we'd appreciate if you do it with Pathfinder, because that kind of makes it drag and drop, and it's pretty easy to make the routing happen. But you got to tell Pathfinder what to do, and that's what you're using this little computer for. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, the guests and the people that work here that eat lunch in the green room, they love it because, used to be a boom box in there, always tuned to the news station, and you don't really want to listen to the news all day sometimes. So it's been appreciated.
That's cool. That's cool. And I'm sure that's cheaper than putting one of the Telos Alliance products in there, like this routing selector, or what the current product is, the X
and that's
selector.
Way more, I got to be honest, that's way more cool too.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. It's very friendly, and you just want to touch it. you just want to touch it.
I keep the selector in the rack room, privately away from everybody else.
There you go.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to hear more about your experiences with audio over IP, and of course, in your case specifically, LiveWire, and also a project that you're doing. You're integrating some older other brand consoles, and not that you're changing those consoles, but you're changing the way they're integrated into the air chain. And I want to hear about that because I think it's brilliant what you're doing. We're going to take a quick break. Our show this week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store, and you can get anything broadcast related from Broadcasters General Store. One of the products that they have is the whole product line from Innovonics, and I've been using this product myself. The Sophia 560 was the 560. No, I'm sorry, the HD Radio site streamer. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, it is a 568. And Chris, if you want to chime in on this as well, we've got some HD stations at our Maui facility, and I wanted a way to pick them up, check on them, see if everything's working well, and have that integrated audio-wise into our Axia network. Now, the Sophia speaks Dante, and maybe it speaks AES-67 as well. We just come out the AES EBU output and go into a freed up AES EBU input on our Axia system. So I can listen to this in really excellent quality, any of the HD channels or the FM. And I get to see the RDS on the FM, and I get to see the PSD on the HD stations, and I can and also it can listen to all these remotely because there's a web interface that lets you go in, tune it to whatever you want, listen to the different channels, look at the statistics. It gives you all kinds of statistics, of course, like RSSI and a noise floor statistic. Of course, a multipath statistic. And so you can see what's going on as well as hear what's going on. Chris, are you using any of these 568s in your operation?
I have the predecessor to that, the Inno Mini, that does similar things. And it's, you're right. It's fantastic. I also have, and I know you've talked about this before, their new HD monitor, the really high-end device that monitors, all your channels and does everything. So I have two of those as well. But, these site streamers are so, and especially like you and I, where you have stations that are out of market, to be able to just do confidence monitoring. For example, I've got HD in my La Crosse market, which is 3 hours away almost. I can log in and see everything that's going on and get alarms. Those do alarms as well. And as you know, Kirk, my favorite, it also has SNMP. So you can do some really cool things with it.
Yeah. And I just noticed from the display that Suncast was showing, it has available a split mode. So you can plug headphones into it or hear it out the back the back outputs and hear your FM in one channel and hear your HD1 in the other channel to help you line those up with each other. And we kind of had to do a rough in alignment in Hawaii. We don't have a Justin box there yet, and we roughed it in. It's been really good. I'm kind of impressed with how stable that it is. But we did that using the Innovonics to help us get that done. So it's just built in. It's easy to use. Love this Site Streamer 568. I can open a browser window. I got available remotely that I can, jump into it. Of course, it's got a strong password and a really unusual port number. So I'm reasonably safe there from, we wouldn't want bad guys going and listening to our radio station. They need to listen the regular way. You could get these Innovonics products from Broadcasters General Store at bgs.cc. bgs.cc. You can call them because they're really set up to take your phone calls. They'll actually talk to you. You don't get a menu of, press 2 for Spanish. They do have some Spanish-speaking people, but check them out at 352-622-7700. That's 352-622-7700. Broadcasters General Store. Love these folks, and I thank them so much for helping us to bring this show to you every week for 737 episodes. bgs.cc. Thanks so much. Okay, Chris Tarr is along, and Megan Amoss is with us as well. Megan, let's talk a little bit more about audio over IP. You're a youngin' in this industry. Maybe when you came in, was audio over IP already a thing for you? Have you just grown up with AoIP?
I did. I was lucky. My very first radio station was being built as I got the job, and it was being built from the ground up in a new building, all Axia, all audio over IP, a beautiful 10-rack TOC. And I was there when it was being built, and I got to work on it. I came in from my first job at the station was traffic coordinator. So I came in that way, and then I got to, as I got more into it, just everything I learned was the audio over IP. So when I came to WYPR, which is a analog, I guess you would say, it was definitely a learning curve.
That's interesting. Chris, most of us, we grew up in the analog and maybe AES-EBU world, and AoIP was like a new thing. We had to kind of unlearn some things that held us back from really taking advantage of what AoIP would do. Has that been your experience, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I would always overthink things and forget about how simply you could make things with audio over IP. And the other thing I wanted to mention, and again, we've been talking about public media, is one of the coolest things was when I did when we built the Radio Milwaukee facility. We had the performance studio, 2 floors, we had a green room and things like that. With audio over IP, I could artists will do things everywhere in the building. We have very creative spaces that we had. And, what I had was I had jacks that connected to the Axia network all over the building. And so, for example, in the green room, we just off in the corner, we had a node sitting there. And so if they wanted to jam out in the green room, we immediately had audio available to record or put on the air. We actually had an instance of the Axia recording software. I don't remember what that was called, the skimmer software.
iProfiler.
And that was iProfiler, and that was set up with to be able to automatically record upon the presence of a signal. So what we would do is, Pathfinder would hear a signal, turn on the recording. So we'd have people upstairs, they'd plug in and they just start jamming and it would automatically start recording. So, same thing, Performance Studio, we had a huge mixing desk, but then that was connected to an Axia node and we could put that on the air or do whatever we wanted with it. So yeah, I don't miss the bad old days. Some of the most fun I have even now is converting studios to audio over IP and yanking out all of the miles of analog cable and all the noise and everything that goes with it. So yeah, it's been a game changer, but it is a learning curve to, kind of stop overthinking and over engineering things when you've got audio over IP.
Yeah. Yeah. You found that to be the case, right, Megan? Well, you haven't been pulling out so much old stuff. You
didn't have to go through all that.
I am. We're doing that here now. We are in the middle of converting WYPR to Axia, so we're pulling out, miles and miles and tons of wire and putting in a couple of Cat6 and yeah.
I'll tell you, I don't remember who I was talking to over the weekend, but I was mentioning, I know we're still doing some work in our new data center, and we're having to redo some more wiring and things. I was talking about my days at Odyssey when I converted a building from analog to audio over IP. We got the audio over IP infrastructure in. Then came time to remove the old cabling, and I still was nervous cutting anything. I had the radio stations on, even though I knew that the wiring was probably dead. You always still get that little nervous, okay, I'm going to cut this, what's going to happen? Because in the bad old days of analog, who knows, who tied what to what? And, there's always these little surprises you'd find that you don't find with audio over IP. So I definitely don't miss that, all these little surprises.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you go right ahead. I'll bring up mine in a minute.
Sure. When TMD was bought by YPR, we all had to, go through interviews and stuff to make sure they were going to keep us. And our chief engineer, Ray Hepner, interviewed me and he asked me, do you know how to solder? And I had to say no, because, it was all Studio Hub and Cat 5 RJ45s at TMD. Yeah. So I went home that night and I learned how.
Nice.
And I think there's a picture. Ray still gives me soldering homework. He gave me for Christmas one of those cubes of LEDs that you have to solder together. It had something like 560 LEDs that you had to solder the legs together. There it is. Yes, that was my homework this year from my boss. Soldering practice.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, I was going to get to that. That's cool. That's amazing. Man, that's a lot. So Megan, you've talked about integrating some other consoles that are not AoIP, and it's a good opportunity for us to just mention that we, for decades, as engineers and programming people, and because we had to, we thought of the audio console as being kind of the final arbiter of what goes on the air, except maybe the EAS box that would interrupt, right? But our consoles were in line all the time. You might have a patch bay to go around it, but when you'd leave the building, you'd leave the faders up, and that's what in the last 25 years or so, we've had automation systems, and we'd leave them on. But with audio over IP, our mindset should be different and can be different, because the console no longer has to be the center of the activity. It can be the network that's the center of the activity, and the the console is just an adjunct to that can be brought in or brought out of the air chain. Isn't that what you are kind of dealing with now with some legacy gear that's in there?
Well, we are replacing the legacy consoles that are hardwired, and we are going to some older audio over IP consoles that we brought from TMD. And as we're doing that, we are able to put the station into console bypass mode, so that when the talent signs off at the end of their shift, they press a button. It's a 17-button panel. They could press that, or they could press a hotkey in the automation, and that Axia will switch to just talking to the drivers on the automation machines, the SAT receivers, and operate everything with the console out of the picture. And, people can do their voice tracks in there or whatever, not worry about it. They can leave all the faders off and not worry about it. And I don't have to get called, at midnight when the show that was on fader 17 comes on and somebody left it off.
I'll tell you, I take it one step further. Most of our, outside of 3 of our stations, the rest of our stations are almost 100%. We do it kind of live voice. I call it live voice tracking. We have local people who voice track the same day, sometimes even during the same shift. And a lot of our stuff runs out of the data center. So while we do have consoles, they are 99% of the time not even in the mix. I mean, they're sitting there in case we want to use them. But we are almost all, it's just, automation system, live wire, EAS, and then out over fiber to the transmitter sites. So, really, and that was tough for me as a paradigm changer to say, okay, we don't need, we have 6 stations here. We don't need, 6 on-air studios, 4 production studios, that sort of thing, because nobody's going to use them. And, that became very hard for me to realize, like in Fort Atkinson, where I've got in the data center, I have 6 or 7 stations originating out of there. I have 2 studios, and, we can just put any station in any studio. But to know that most of the time, they're not even in play. They're just completely bypassed.
Yep. Yeah. Same for us. We have 1 or 2 studios in each city, usually 1, and we use it for production, and then we use it for on the air when we're doing something live. Yeah. Hey, we're talking to Chris Tarr and Megan Amoss. Megan is the assistant chief engineer at Baltimore Public Media, and I'm glad to have her on the show, and along with Chris talking about metadata. And Megan, we haven't asked you about RF yet. We're going to get to our last couple of topics as we close out the show in just a few minutes. Our show is brought to you in part by Angry Audio, and Chris Tarr is an Angry Audio expert. And so when he's here, we bring Chris Tarr in to tell us about Angry Audio, and usually about some mic processing or something like that. Chris, what would you like to talk about today?
If you hear my dulcet tones, it is the Chameleon Rebel processor. And what's cool about it, and if it weren't for the fact that it's wired in, it's right in front of me, I'd put it in front of the camera. But basically, in everything Angry Audio, Catfish is always looking for something, that's simple, that's easy, but also functions really, really well. And Corny Gold, the processing guru, was in on this, and it was a great conversation. I remember talking to Catfish about this, and he was talking about making a mic processor, but he hates all the knobs, and so do I. I mean, it's really easy to make a mic processor sound bad because there's so many controls on it. So he spoke to Corny and said, "Hey, can we make a mic processor with just only a couple of knobs?" And Corny said, "No. It's going to be impossible." And Catfish said, "Well, why?" And Corny said, "Well, because each mic has a different characteristic." And that's where Catfish jumped in and said, "What if we knew what kind of mic it was going to connect to?" And Corny said, "Well, that changes everything." So sure enough, that's how this was born. Now there's 2 models. There's the Rebel. The RE in Rebel stands for RE20, which is made for the Electro Voice microphones. Excuse me. And then there's the Smooth, which is starts with SM. That's for the SM7 and the SM5, and the mics that use those same capsules. And there's very few controls on here. In fact, I'm going to pull the front cover off. If you look at that picture there, that front panel comes off, and there's controls in there. And there's a high and a low, input, output, little density meter there. And it's so easy to set up. And in fact, the DS, I'm using a DS right now. I've never used a DS-er on a mic processor because I've always felt that it makes the audio sound flat. All the sparkle goes away. Well, not with the DS-er on here. I don't know what kind of magic and, whatever pixie dust that's in there, but the DS-er sounds great. The room noise is another one. Room size is kind of like a gate, but it's not really a gate. It's not that typical everything goes away when you stop talking. It just almost kind of effortlessly kind of shrinks the room and makes it sound a lot smaller. And of course, you've got your Studio Hub input and output. You've got the regular XLR input and output. It's got a built-in high-quality power supply. It is silent. The noise floor on this is almost non-existent. It's a fantastic preamp. And, the other thing I like to tell people is this is the first time I've had a mic processor that just out of the box just sounds big. I mean, I really, you can get in with presence, you can lean back a little bit, and it just always sounds right on point. And in fact, everybody at the station is jealous when I voice track because my mic sounds so good. So check it out. Go online, angryaudio.com. Check out the Chameleon mic processors, the Rebel for the RE20s and 27s, and the Smooth for the SM5 and the SM7. It is going to make you sound good. You're going to get it set up in about 5 minutes out of the box, and you're going to be ready to go, and you're going to be so happy with it. So talk to your favorite broadcast dealer. Stop out, check out online, angryaudio.com. And they've got not only that, but a whole bunch of other solutions, including something I'm sure we're going to be talking about really soon, a brand new audio processor. Stay tuned for that.
Hey, Chris, the reason your voice always sounds good is because your heart's in the right place. And the vocal box is connected to the heart.
That's right. It's I've got a big heart that goes with my big
That's
voice.
Right. That's right. Hey, our show is also brought to you by Max Connect Wireless, and they have a really reliable system that's intended for transmitter sites. It can be used elsewhere, but Max Connect Wireless really went on the radar because of their prioritized 4G LTE data and using ordinary 4G LTE modems, but they're special SIM cards that have a special relationship with the phone carriers. You get prioritized data and a fixed IP address. Well, now they've combined that along with satellite delivered IP data, and so you would normally be using the satellite delivered data, but if you reach any kind of a maximum cap or something like that with the satellite, you'll get switched, or the satellite, you get snow in the dish or whatever, then you can switch over to your Max Connect LTE router, or set it up the other way so that you're normally on the LTE, but the satellite is a backup. So you've got either way to go, and you can put this at studios or transmitter sites, places where you might have trouble getting internet, and you want not one, but two sources of internet. That's what you get with this new idea from Max Connect. They supply you with a router that is capable of a pass-through from the satellite receiver, and it works out really well. If you need, if you got a mountaintop site, a site that's hard to get to, this is really a great way to go because you get a very reliable operation since you have two sources of internet being controlled there, and you get connected to the one that works or the one that you want. Max Connect, it's maxconnect.com. I know it's spelled funny. There's a link in the show notes. It's maxkonnect.com because the internet, we're out of names apparently, and so that's what you got. Big shout out to Josh Bone for this great idea a few years ago, and he has continued to develop it for broadcasters. He is one himself, so there you go. He uses his own products. Appreciate very much Max Connect Wireless for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. We've got just a couple minutes left, and this is normally, Megan, where we do the tip of the week, but I didn't warn you about that. I have a picture here of this sculpture from WTMD. We want to pop that picture up when Suncast can and find out what kind of test instrument is this you're holding?
That's the 3-drone 475 hertz instrument.
All right.
Yes, I played the bagpipes. Yep.
That's
I play
awesome.
them for spite because they're the most horrible instrument.
No, they're not.
Just
No, the most horrible instrument is the recorder that we were all required to play in
yes.
5th grade. Yeah, that was bad.
that
I could rock
that's
3
true.
blind mice on that, though. I'll tell you.
3 blind. Yeah, exactly. All right. So the pipe sculpture there, the tower. Was this for fun, or is it serving a purpose somewhere, or
Well,
what?
that tower was made by a TMDR director of finance, Kirsten Schofield. Her husband, Tim Schofield, is a sculptor, so he made that for us for the Baltimore Christmas parade. So I, for whatever reason, was serenading it, and she took a picture of me.
Now, did you ever get to combine your ability to play bagpipes, which that's got to be like walking and chewing gum and patting your head and rubbing your tummy all at the same time? I can't imagine how to do that. But did you ever get to combine your love of bagpipes and your broadcast engineering?
Well, not with the broadcast engineering so much, but I have been a guest on the morning show on Robbie
Nice.
Burns' birthday.
That's
and
awesome.
So when do you have a chance to play the bagpipes? I take it you're part of what's it called, a troupe, a group, a bagpipe band?
A pipe band. I'm the pipe major for the Baltimore City Pipe Band.
Okay.
And after we get done this, I'm going to go off and run band practice.
Now, there's somebody that Chris probably knows, and I know him well enough.
You do,
Chris Imlay. Do you happen to know Chris Imlay?
I have not met him, but he's in my pipe band association in the same region, so we may compete against each other. I think we're in the same grade at the next Highland Games.
All right. Well, good deal. Chris, I'm sorry. I think I interrupted something you were going to say.
No, I just said I knew who you were going to mention.
Well, Chris, it's we're at the end of the show. It's time for a tip of the week. Can you real quick reach into the trash can and find us a noteworthy tip?
Sure, just 3 quick ones, and these are not new, but just a reminder: we this past weekend we're doing some moving around in our data center. 3 things. I always use different colored Cat5 cables for different functions. Red for audio over IP, blue for automation systems, black for office net. Use Velcro, do not use zip ties. And also I found it very helpful to bring grease pencils so that when you're rearranging equipment, if it's not labeled or you need to know what's in it, you can just, in a corner, right on there with the grease pencil, what you're doing with that piece of equipment, and it cleans off pretty easily.
That's a great idea. So there's use for the leftover grease pencils from the splicing block days after all, isn't there?
Right, exactly. If you could find one of those in the studio, grab it.
I've been to stations where things like that have still not been thrown out, not even after 30 years.
Oh, I still, I've still been known to like tape things up with splicing tape. So there you go.
There you go. Megan, I'm going to surprise you. I'm so sorry. I've done it again. Do you have a tip of the week to pass along, a little bit of knowledge or wisdom that you think other people should know?
Well, this is kind of a silly one, but if you are trying to trace wires by yourself and you have a whole bunch of them that are the same color, if you put a little piece of Velcro around the one that you're following and you push it along, even if you go through furniture, you can always find it on the other side.
That's actually pretty cool. I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that contribution. I had never heard that one before, and I've heard a lot of them over and over from Chris. So thanks very kindly. We got to go. Megan, it's been a delight to chat with you for the last hour. I'm so glad you're able to make it. And thank you for, thank you for being a lady in the broadcasting business. It's just great to have you as part of the club. Chris, you too. Thank you for being a man and being here in the club as well.
Well, thank you for noticing that I'm a man. I appreciate it.
That's what I'm told. All right, guys, we got to go. Big thanks to Suncast for producing today's episode of This Week in Radio Tech. Appreciate you, Suncast. And coming up next week, Chris, I hope you can make it. Next week, we're exploring SD-WAN technology. And this is something that I know very little about. We've got a guy who I think he's been a guest before, Dan Merwin, and one of his colleagues. They consult in SD-WANs, and they sell the accoutrement that go along with establishing SD-WANs. So that's coming up next week. And Dan is speaking to our SBE chapter next week as well. So we got to go. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.